and good evening and welcome to Watchdog live from Television Centre tonight. School meals, tiny portions, filthy kitchens, a report that will shock every parent. British Gas fighting for survival, but is it safe? And BSE, why the experts are saying no to beef. Watchdog, the programme you cannot afford to miss. Remember, we are live. If you want to ring us, here's the number, 0500 500 567. The call is free. Alice is busy answering the phones along with Chris Choi and Jonathan Maitland and the rest of the team. First, how does a school decide how to feed your child? The answer, it hires the firm which offers to do it cheapest. The result, all you might fear, smaller portions cooked in filthy kitchens. This is BET Catering Services, part of the multi-million-pound conglomerate BET plc. Lord Tebbit is on the board as a non-executive director. BET is the biggest supplier of school meals in the country. It has contracts with 11 local authorities. From Lancashire alone, a 4-year deal worth 67 million. Yet, in nearby Stockport, same company has been dismissed in mid-contract from supplying meals in 13 schools. Why? The answer will concern every parent. Chris Choi reports.
This is the story of a school meals company that served eggs 5 weeks past their best before date.
So basically, after Christmas, he's going on to pack lunches now because he just doesn't like them.
The school meals company, which had out-of-date cheese with mould on the packet.
For what you pay and what you get, it's just not worth it.
The school meals company that shared one catering-sized tin of beans amongst 71 children.
School dinners are not nice because you don't get enough.
BET Catering Services Limited is the biggest supplier of school meals in the country, serving 2.5 million lunches every week. But complaints have gone far beyond the usual playground grumbles. Reports of stale food, stingy portions and poor hygiene have led to the company losing its contract with 13 schools in Stockport.
And in the last few days, while we've been preparing our report, news has emerged of an outbreak of salmonella at the Stockport school that got to number 1 in 1980.
Grandma, we love you. Grandma, we do. Though you may be far away, we think of you.
The salmonella outbreak, which happened at St Winifred's last month, infected at least 7 children, causing diarrhoea and vomiting. BET has provided the school meals for 2 years. Dr. David Baxter is investigating the outbreak. So far, he has no evidence that links the infection to a food source outside the school, so the evidence is pointing inside.
Within school, we're looking at, have the children been on a trip together and consumed some food there? Have they got a tuck shop? Is it related to consumption of school meals? Now, the evidence so far would suggest that it's not trips related, nor do they have a tuck shop. So we're starting to hone in on school meals as a possible explanation.
You have to remember this incident actually started a month ago. Enabled to be able to investigate and to link categorically school meals with this incident, it's actually not possible to do that. So I would refute that and say, again, there is no evidence.
If school meals are the cause, it will be a severe embarrassment for BET. It would come at the end of a long list of complaints by Stockport Council about low food quality. Problems first detected by inspectors and detailed in full council reports. On 3 occasions, they found eggs past their best before date. Substandard potatoes had also been used. A meat and vegetable pie was reheated and reserved. Portions were small and hygiene standards were poor, with dirty ovens and filthy fryers.
There have been 18 months where we've issued warnings. BET have known that if they didn't deliver, they could find that the contract was taken off them. That's now what's happened because it went too far.
We have had some unfortunate circumstances in Stockport. We've lost 13 schools, and that's something that we are extremely sad about, and we're working hard to make sure does not happen again.
But Stockport isn't unique. Louise Ellman is leader of Lancashire County Council. They have one of the largest BET school meals contracts in the country, worth £67 million.
The authority heard reports about problems with hygiene, problems with the content of the meal, and difficulties about the amounts of food being offered. The company have now been informed officially of the authorities' grave concern about this situation, and they've been told that unless the company makes significant improvements by the end of the autumn term, the authority will be looking at formal procedures.
All councils have to put school catering out to tender. As long as a basic level of quality is provided, whoever offers the cheapest service wins. BET has become highly successful at this competitive tendering. They now cook at 3,500 schools in 11 local authority areas.
And when they win a contract, they're obliged to keep on the existing staff. But dinner ladies in Stockport had their hours cut. Some former employees say lower standards were the result of that, and new BET instructions.
Cut down the portion sizes for the children, and also freeze meat that was left over and expected to reheat it, which is very unacceptable.
I'm actually very proud of the hygiene standards that we have within our company. They're extremely high. Local authority environmental health officers actually will be visiting our schools on a regular basis to make sure that we comply with food hygiene law. If there was a problem, they'd be telling us that there's a problem. They don't tell us there's a problem.
But in Stockport, officials did tell BET there were problems with kitchen and food hygiene. 37 times the company was warned. And there were warnings about portion sizes. 19 times they fell below the level specified by the council.
Portion sizes are dictated to us by the client. We do not say what they are. The client, the local authority, will tell us what the portion size should be.
Nearly a quarter of school dinners are now cooked by private firms. Some people see a basic clash of interests at the heart of these new arrangements.
Nationally, the school meals market is huge. It's worth millions of pounds. I think we've got the problem that we want the quality to be high. They've got the problem that they want the profits to be high.
Now, I'm sure most parents will want to know what rights have they got in a situation like that. None at all, except to complain. It's councillors who decide who gets the school meals contract, not the parents. So when your children object to the quality and quantity of food being served at school, they deserve to be listened to. Incidentally, the chief executive of BET plc has just had his salary and incentive package doubled to more than £1 million a year. At what price to youngsters? Alice.
And coming up later, BSE, why the experts are beginning to say no to beef. Plus the results of a Watchdog poll. Have the concerns about mad cow disease changed the nation's eating habits?
Next, British Gas. After all the convulsions of the last week, it's given up its charter mark, the Director of Customer Service has resigned. What's left? Who's looking after the customers? Is anybody listening to us? Does anybody care? Cedric Brown, the Chief Executive, didn't want to talk to Watchdog tonight. We'll make do with this. On Friday, however, his last appearance on television, he didn't seem to think there was a problem.
We will continue to deliver very high standards of service to our customers, simply to survive.
Is he talking about us? Have we missed something? Let's have a look at what's happened so far. It's a sorry tale. Last month, we revealed British Gas was in danger of losing its charter mark because of its poor record and ever-increasing complaints. A British Gas spokesperson told us this.
We're very proud of the charter mark. Our staff are very proud of the charter mark. If we had the charter mark taken away, I think all that would do would be to reduce staff morale.
Joy King of British Gas. She's still there, we believe, but the message has changed. Here's what my friend, Mr. Brown, was saying on Friday.
The situation has changed, even within the month that you've quoted. The way we will be operating in the future is different than the way we're operating today.
The saga of British Gas since privatisation is extraordinary. You couldn't make it up. The company was launched in 1986 with the help of another gas man we never got to meet, Paul Sid.
Gas shares. It couldn't be easier to do. Oh, yeah. Phone his number and they send you information on how to apply. If you see Sid, tell him, won't you?
Better service, lower prices and a pledge to put the customer first, all very promising.
British Gas really was beginning to improve markedly before privatisation actually started. It had that tradition of public service, and it continued it into the privatised era. And we were pleased with their early performance.
That was the promise. The following year, the cracks began to show, as Watchdog demonstrated in January 1987.
I'd like to know why, after 3 weeks, I'm still waiting for water, hot water to bath my son, and heating to heat my house. This went on New Year's Day. I'd like to know if this is the new standard of service we are likely to expect with the new privatisation of British Gas.
And the complaints kept coming.
The thing that really annoyed me about the whole thing was broken appointments which were never explained and never apologised for.
Cedric Brown, then a humble managing director earning a modest £150,000 a year, was in those days prepared to come on to Watchdog. He had this to say about Edward Parrott's problems.
It's one of those jobs, unfortunately, that error seems to get compounded on error. Our aim and our commitment and all that we're putting in place will eliminate those in the future.
How? A £1 million advertising campaign. Remember this.
Asking me how I'd improve things and what gets up my nose. Right now, my dear, you're top of the list. I know you don't work for British Gas. They wouldn't have you.
And at the start, it seemed to be working.
We applauded the Banishing Gripes initiative by British Gas, and we saw the number of complaints coming to the Gas Consumers Council gradually begin to drop. And that was encouraging for us. Most importantly, it was encouraging for the customers. And British Gas was really doing extremely well under that Banishing Gripes initiative right through until 1993.
But just as things were improving, British Gas announced a radical reorganisation plan.
British Gas is to shed another 5,000 jobs on top of the 20,000 announced only 2 months ago.
We have to take action.
170 gas showrooms were closed down.
We have to take action.
The salaries of showroom staff were cut, but there was good news for one employee.
We have to take action.
Mr. Brown's own salary went up by 75% to £475,000 a year. Since then, he's been on the run. By earlier this year, Watchdog was swamped with complaints about British Gas's 3-star service.
British Gas investigated and told Balbe Chatrick not to use her central heating system. It was dangerous.
Next, we revealed that British Gas was in danger of losing its charter mark. And finally, 2 weeks ago, our Watchdog story hit all the headlines. British Gas engineers were acting as salesmen, earning bonuses if they recommended a new central heating system rather than repairing the old one. Our evidence of the company's inefficiency and incompetence continues. British Gas says, in spite of everything, customers' safety remains paramount. Really? Try telling that to the residents of Colwyn Bay in North Wales. Here, British Gas had a contract with the council to service gas appliances for council tenants. Last year, the company pulled out. What the new contractors found shocked the council. A third of the gas heaters had been inadequately serviced, and some of the ventilation systems could have proved fatal.
The initial survey identified 524 houses and up to 900 are affected in different ways. But out of those 524, 80 houses were so severely affected that we had to shut down the appliances and arrange for immediate works to be done to rectify the problem.
And that means many of the elderly tenants are now without gas fires until their appliances are checked.
So how long's this fire been off now, Tom?
Since about August.
British Gas says it doesn't accept that residents were at risk, but the government-run Health and Safety Executive is now investigating.
Well, if the investigation by the Health and Safety Executive proves the findings that the officers seem to have found so far, I think it's an absolute outrage that a national company that we trust so implicitly with the safety of everybody, all age groups, has allowed this situation to arise.
The whole point about this story is that 5 years ago we wouldn't have believed it possible. Now it doesn't seem at all surprising. Thankfully, in 2 years' time, less if you live in the southwest, we'll all have a choice about who we buy our gas from. And frankly, the threat of competition seems to be the only effective stick with which to beat British Gas.
What British Gas has to do is to place a value on public esteem, to realise the cost of losing people's confidence. And it can only do that by really looking fundamentally at what it's offering to people. Is it offering what people want? We think it is not. Its competitors are ready to step into the gap. And unless British Gas finds out what its customers want and gives them what they want, it will lose market share in a dramatic fashion.
Next, mad cow disease, BSE. Every week, up to 300 suspected new cases in British cattle. The question, is it crossing from cattle to humans and causing the notorious Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, known as CJD, which destroys the brain? The government says we have no need to worry. Any danger is contained in the offal of cattle, and that's removed and condemned. Not so, say the experts. Calves under 6 months are excluded from the ban. There is nothing to stop the manufacturers of all the well-known brands of pies, patties and soups from using the brains of calves in their products. Here's what those experts have decided. First, Helen Grant, one of the country's leading authorities on BSE, a former Middlesex hospital consultant in neuropathology.
We now know, as a result of recent work, that the red meat of beef does seem to infect experimental animals. Therefore, I have changed my mind about beef, and I've told my children and others not to eat beef at all.
Professor Sir Bernard Tomlinson, architect of the NHS reforms and again a leading expert on brain disease.
Offal from calves under the age of 6 months is allowed into the food chain even if they come from a herd which is infected. And that, I just think, is silly and taking a possible risk that is unjustified. What I have done is made a determination to avoid eating anything that contains beef offal. And on the whole, that's things like meat pies, beef puree, soups, particularly perhaps consommé, perhaps sausages and pork pies.
Alan Hitchens, London vet and Ministry of Agriculture inspector.
I gave up eating beef 5 years ago along with my family because it appeared that the risk of this organism crossing the species barrier into man was quite high.
And Geoffrey Cannon, chairman of the National Food Alliance and an authority on food policy.
I try to cut out beef completely since the 1980s because of the evidence that BSE, mad cow disease, might possibly transmit to human beings.
Are those changes in eating habits being matched by the rest of us?
Yes, they are. A poll conducted exclusively for tonight's Watchdog shows a quarter of the country, 1 in 4 people, has now either stopped eating beef entirely or is eating beef less. More than half, 51%, say they're concerned about the risks of mad cow disease. Women are more worried than men. 56% expressed concern. Of men, 75%, interestingly, said concerns about BSE had made no difference.
The latest suspected case in Britain of a person dying from Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is Jean Wake from Washington Tyne and Weir. Jean Wake was 38. Her case has highlighted the whole issue yet again. After she died, her family wrote to the Prime Minister demanding action, but the reply they received from John Major's private secretary was unequivocal. I should make it clear, she wrote, that humans do not get mad cow disease. Jean Wake's family remain unconvinced.
My sister-in-law died of CJD, and we know that now. We don't have to wait for the government to come back with their tests. We know it as a fact now. So my straight question back to the government is, where did Jean get CJD from? It has to be the fact that she's eaten infected meat.
And who shall blame Mr Henderson for holding on to that view, especially when you consider tonight's news? The Ministry of Agriculture is conceding that for every cow found to be infected with BSE and then slaughtered, 2 others with the disease are slipping through the system. Alice.
Lariam, the drug now prescribed at virtually every surgery in the country to protect travellers from mosquitoes carrying malaria. But it's a drug which can have dangerous side effects. Only 1 person in 10,000 is seriously affected, says the manufacturer. On that basis, we've heard from nearly all of them this week. More evidence has been pouring into the Watchdog office from British travellers who'd taken the drug with frightening results. Here's Jonathan Maitland.
So I get up in the morning and invariably these days the first thing I do is reach for a bottle of tablets to nullify the effects of my anxiety and depression.
He then went into this fit and began to turn blue from pale blue to purple and was literally choking.
When Margaret Bishop saw Watchdog's report on Lariam, she got in touch with us immediately. She and her husband Derek Bishop went to Kenya 2 months ago, but their holiday ended frighteningly. Derek Bishop, who till then had been in good health, had an epileptic fit just hours after arriving in Nairobi.
We were chatting in the gardens to some other travellers when Derek suddenly became incoherent and what was coming out was just a load of rubbish, and his eyes began to stare, at which point I realised there was something wrong with him.
the Hospital for Tropical Diseases in London. Here there's a travel clinic which gives advice and treatment for those going abroad.
Since our programme last Monday, hundreds of people have been ringing in here and asking about Lariam. Some have simply wanted more information, but others have wanted to report that they too have suffered an adverse reaction. This has added to the suspicion that the drug's side effects may be much more common and much more serious than doctors think.
Stuart Waddell was also struck by Watchdog's report. He's an engineer and took Lariam while on a working trip to Malaysia. He immediately began to get panic attacks. He's now been on paid leave for the last 6 months.
I had a very responsible job and my prospects were looking very good. That now has all gone out the window. A lot of the day I spend pacing up and down the lounge looking out the window. Maybe do some housework for the wife. Very rarely get out. My wife says she's seen dramatic mood changes in me, which is obviously affecting our home life. I've changed in 6 months from a stable, self-confident person with a steady job and an active social life to somebody now who finds it hard to go out of his front door some days and really is living his life as a nervous wreck.
The key question here is this: how many people who take these Lariam tablets actually get side effects? Well, the company that makes them, Hoffmann La Roche, say that only 1 in 10,000 gets a really serious reaction. But research published in the British Medical Journal recently suggests that figure may be far too low. The figures only came out in July. They're the preliminary results of a trial being carried out by the Ministry of Defence on British troops in Kenya. 90% of those given Lariam, or mefloquine as it's also known, suffered some side effects, a much higher mild toxicity than had commonly been recognised. But these figures on the prevention of malaria must be treated with caution. The survey is a relatively small one and crucially doesn't distinguish between serious reactions and mild ones. Other anti-malarial drugs were tested too, and roughly 90% of people taking those suffered side effects. This uncertainty is why experts like Dr. Gordon Cook believe the government should now fund a full inquiry into Lariam. He's convinced the number of people dangerously affected has been grossly underestimated.
Well, I think we need some large studies assessing the true incidence of side effects, and we need to divide those into the trivial ones and the serious ones, the neuropsychiatric ones, which we're talking about now. I think we must, as a matter of urgency, get a true assessment of these, of the prevalence of these effects.
Possibly the most damning verdict of all, though, comes from one of the country's leading GPs. We asked Dr. John Chisholm if he would take Lariam if he was going on holiday to Africa.
Unless I had to go to sub-Saharan Africa in the course of my work, I would actually choose to take a holiday somewhere else.
And why would you be so reluctant to take the drug in the first place?
I would be reluctant because of the information that is reported to me and to all doctors about its safety profile and its side effects. Some of those side effects are serious and extremely unpleasant. Lariam is not unique as a drug in producing such side effects, but nonetheless having a beneficial use. But it's for that reason that I would be reluctant to take it unless I had to.
Well, the dilemma spelled out there by one of the country's top GPs. He'd rather not go to the places where you need to take Lariam. Watchdog has gone to one of those places, Kenya, and spoken to British holidaymakers currently there.
British tourists here in Mombasa express a wide range of opinions about the side effects they suffer while taking the anti-malarial drug known by its brand name Lariam. While some have no adverse effects from the drug at all, many more say it's changed their temperament, given them bad dreams and made them feel generally unwell.
A survey of holidaymakers at one of the main hotels on the coastline south of Mombasa revealed that almost half of those taking Lariam had suffered from a range of different side effects.
Since I've been taking it, I've been having crazy dreams, and normally I don't dream. The dreams have been of a violent nature.
No problem at all.
Been surprised, actually.
Yes, you wait for something to happen and nothing's happened. No, it's fine.
We saw the Watchdog programme advertised, and I said, we'll watch this about these Lariam and see what happens. And it was only then that Wendy realised that why she was feeling so ill.
The woman on the telly was describing exactly how I felt. I wasn't going to the toilet, but
but I did feel terribly sick. I had a blinding headache for 3 days before we came here. And as I felt giddy, and driving the car was a bit of a so-and-so and all.
Almost all the tourists had been prescribed Lariam by their doctors, but the advice they were given varied considerably.
None. Just charged us a fortune to get them. But apart from that, they didn't give us anything, did they?
My doctor did. I was separate from you.
Yeah.
But my doctor was very good.
I was just advised by the nurse at the doctor's practice to take them, and I did. So I had to get a private prescription before going down to the chemist. But no, I wasn't aware of the side effects at all.
Dr. Kawaljit Reki runs a surgery for foreign tourists who stay at the main hotels in Mombasa. Patients come to him for malaria tests and advice about their ailments. Tourists often approach him, complaining that their Lariam anti-malarial pills are making them feel unwell.
The most common problem I see among the tourists is dizziness. Some of them go into blackouts and faint. Some of them go into depressions. There's some who keep on crying the whole day. I don't think most of them are properly told what they're going to face or what they're going to feel after taking Lariam.
That report from the BBC correspondent in Nairobi, Greg Barrow. From this week's Watchdog logs and our post, there are dozens more examples.
Anne Jones from Shropshire said that after she took Lariam, she was unable to speak. She was rushed to hospital. 2 years later, she's still suffering headaches, dizziness and ringing in her ears. A viewer from Newcastle took one Lariam tablet and started behaving like a crazy lunatic. She was so bad, the airline wouldn't let her travel. Another viewer from Norfolk went to Hong Kong last month. 48 hours after taking her second Lariam tablet, she suffered convulsions and says she would have died from asphyxiation if her travelling companion hadn't known about first aid.
Tonight, finally, a breakthrough on this. Just before we came on air, a fax from the manufacturers of Lariam, Hoffmann-La Roche, admitting that their figure of 1 in 10,000 likely to have serious side effects is not the whole picture. Less serious effects, they concede, are known to occur on a more frequent basis. Emergency guidelines are going out tonight to GPs, chemists and travel clinics. Right, let's catch up on the phone news. Chris.
School meals. We've spoken to someone who feels passionately about the issue. Nikki Browning, she's headmistress of Brookhead Junior in Stockport. That's one of the schools that dismissed BET Catering, the firm at the centre of the report tonight. She says since they've gone, the meals have improved immeasurably in terms of quality and quantity. Everybody seems much happier. There's much wider choice. And we've heard from the Parent Teachers Associations in Stockport. They want a campaign for better nutrition in school meals.
Quite right. Jonathan, Hoffmann-La Roche is saying, consult your doctor. Will it help?
Well, I hope so, but we did a little survey. 10 of us rang up our doctors, said we're going to Africa, what should we take? 5 were asked no questions and given Lariam straight away. The other 5 were told, come in, we must talk to you about side effects. So the problem is different doctors are saying different things.
Not all of them know about it. Alice, who's your friend?
Cedric is my friend. He is definitely in my good books, so are British Gas. Last night, one of their engineers saved my life. My boiler was left broken and leaking gas by a cowboy company. British Gas engineer came round, very nice man, solved the leak and mended my boiler.
And didn't
I like
charge
Cedric.
you? Yeah.
Didn't charge me.
And that's nothing to do with Alice working for Watchdog. We've run out of time. From all of us here on the team, thank you for watching. Good night.
The crucial day looms for desperate Nigel. EastEnders next on BBC One.